Hey everybody, welcome to the Herd Fit Podcast with Dr. Sam Rhee and myself, Coach David Syvertsen. This podcast is aimed at helping anyone and everyone looking to enhance their healthy lifestyle through fitness, nutrition, and most importantly, mindset.
All right, welcome back to the Herd Fit Podcast. I'm Coach David Syvertsen. I'm here with my co-host, Dr. and Coach Sam Rhee, fresh off coaching the Thursday 5-6 a.m. thruster run workout. Saw a lot of smiles, not really.
No, a lot of people lying on the ground afterwards, actually. That was a tough one.
So his endorphins are running high. It always helps to, be around CrossFit before you talk about it. So it was fun. I got to come in and watch like the last minute of that workout and kind of got me fired up to talk about today because this one relates to everyone. Today's topic. It can be more biased towards people that are starting out and or people that are going to do CrossFit at some point. And I want to be sure that before we get into it, if you've been CrossFitting for 10 years, I still think this relates to you. Based on, it can bring some clarity to why you struggle with some things, why you do really well with some things, and why others are seeing progress compared to you, right? I think comparison is always the thief of joy, right? Where you think you're doing a really good job, but the second you start bringing other people into the evaluation of yourself, you can go down a really dark path and not really see the light of how well you're doing, right? I mean, I think if you're on a consistent workout routine, you're top 10% in the world because a lot of people just don't do it at a certain point. And I think that's something you should be very proud of. But I understand, and I've been there down myself, where why am I struggling with this and other guys are not? Whether it's competitively or just fitness-wise. Why do I have a knee issue and someone else does not, right? I do all this stuff, they don't, and they're not struggling, right? And I think that's the wrong idea. I don't think you should go down that path when you're self-evaluating, and it's hard to. Opening thoughts on that, Sam, because I know you've been around this for a long time. You've probably been down that path as well, all right, comparing and good and bad. Just before we get into what we're going to talk about today, what is just that thought of when you really reflect on your personal experience and progress or lack thereof, does it really come into your head what other people are doing when you're really evaluating yourself?
Absolutely. I have always compared myself to people in CrossFit. You can't help it. You have a whiteboard every day.
Right.
I have at times used it in positive and good ways. And then I've also used it, unfortunately, in negative ways where it's kind of brought me down. I feel like you always have ups and downs in your health, fitness, what have you. And I think sometimes it's really tough when you might be banged up or injured and you feel frustrated because you yourself don't look like you're making progress in relationship to others. And I do love that saying you said, comparison is the thief of joy. Mm-hmm. Like, it takes time to figure out that you have to move at your own pace and other people are not you. But, that still is tough. Even on an everyday basis, I will look at that whiteboard and be like, man, yeah, I wish I had done better, even though for myself, I did great. Mm-hmm. So I try to remind others, especially as a coach, that they are doing awesome, regardless of what they might be comparing themselves to, because we have a very fit group of individuals here.
Very.
And if you just keep looking at them and not just sort of looking at your own progress, you could easily get very discouraged.
Absolutely. Any day, any class even now at this point. But what I'm glad you said there that I kind of just want to bounce off of a little bit into what we're going to talk about is the fact that you make sure, because of what you've been through mentally, you make sure as a coach that you tell other people you want to be the unbiased outside voice that can overshadow someone's inside voice of saying you're doing a great job, and you truly are. And I know sometimes it's coach speak, and sometimes people say, oh, well, you have to say that you're a coach. Let's take the coach out of it. I think this is a challenge I would give a lot of veteran CrossFitters when you're around people that are new, is use it as an opportunity to maybe give them some of your personal experience. Hey, I've been there. And hey, trust me, you are doing a good job. You might not feel like it, but you are. I've been in your shoes before. And what we can do is what today's topic is about, is consider your pre-CrossFit training lifestyle. What did you do workout-wise prior to starting CrossFit? How much impact does that have right now, or did it have over your history of starting CrossFit on your progress or lack thereof? And I have 6. I might blend 2 of them together, so it might be 5 topics. We'll see. We're a little short on time today, but I have 5 training backgrounds that most of you fall under. I know at some point you're going to be like, oh, well, I don't fall under any of those. Coach Liz, for example, what she did prior to CrossFit, which is nothing, which is to me, I think is actually more impressive than anything, right? There's a lot of people in the gym. We had her on. She talked about this, right? She didn't do anything. She didn't see the inside of a gym for 10 years after she graduated high school. And you don't know that. You would never believe that if you've started at Bison over the past 5, 6, 7 years. You just see, someone that can do things with their body that most women cannot, most people cannot, right? But she didn't have a background. And in some ways, it actually helped her. In some ways, it hurt her. And that's kind of like there's a pros and cons to all of these. So yes, do I think there are certain things that are better than others background-wise prior to starting CrossFit? I do. And I'll let you know where I would kind of rank these. But I want to go through them first, and then we'll go back to the top and kind of talk about what is probably the most ideal background. And here's something that came into my head on the drive here this morning. I've had so many people over the past few months inquire about their kids starting CrossFit, like 10-year-olds, 11-year-olds, 12-year-olds, and they are looking into having them join our classes. And we have a policy here with age, and there's a lot that goes into it. We won't get into that now. That might be a fun topic to talk about down the road.
Yeah.
But this is what I would, if I was going to make a CrossFitter in a factory, there are one of these backgrounds that I do lean towards that would help my son do CrossFit when he's ready to do it.
Brock, listen carefully.
Yes. He's here 5 days a week, which is probably pretty cool just to be around the gym environment. But I'll tell you what, you might not believe me on this. He's not going to be doing classes, earlier than he should be. And CrossFit Kids, that's a whole nother discussion. And so, but with these backgrounds, he's going to have at least one of these. He'll probably have multiple, and some of you guys have multiple. So let's go through them real quick, and then we'll go back to the top. One of them is the most common, bodybuilding plus endurance training. All right, so basically that's a fancy way of saying you lift weights and you do some cardio work. All right. Sports. High school, yeah, I was thinking more college or professional, right? Like that's your background. There's a lot that goes into that. But I would say at minimum high school, but leaning more towards college and professional. Number 3, Ironman / triathlon / endurance bias. We have a good amount of those in the gym right now. That's your background. Work out for a long time, do a lot of endurance work, but it's mixed modal in their world anyway, all right, where you're swimming and biking and running. The other one would just be running. Sometimes swimming, but really, we know a lot of people that their fitness regimen is running, cost effect. So that's really that's a fitness background that a lot of people have when they come to CrossFit. They get their heart rate up, heart is pretty healthy, they run. The last two I can blend together. Boot camp / class-based fitness, so that you go to a gym, you pay membership, you're with a group of people and you train, and or one-on-one individual training. You hire a personal trainer, you probably pay a lot of money for it, and you work out with them 3-4 days a week. Those are the backgrounds that I have. Is there any that you think I'm missing out on? Like, do you think if you start CrossFit, you probably have one of those, or you've never been to a gym before?
I know some people who have a more of a yoga / Pilates / bar training type thing.
So I would group that. When I was thinking about that, I was grouping that with the group-based classes. Yeah. I mean, some people do that stuff on their own. Right? Yeah. So yeah, that's probably, and that we do have a good amount of people, especially early on. That was like a bigger thing, I think. I don't know much about the Pilates business, but I do feel like we had a lot more people came in with that background 10 years ago than we do now.
Yeah,
that is one of them.
More mobility based,
right,
than say some other fitness disciplines.
Yeah. So maybe we'll talk about that when we get to the group based stuff or individual training. Mm-hmm. So the first one, if I did have to make a CrossFitter, let's say I was one of these dads that was going to live vicariously through my son. And
what do you mean you are going to do that? You do that now.
Well, there's this story in that's very popular right now about this dad that has taken like a 7-year-old. I think he's 7 or 8 now, and he's called Baby Gronk.
Oh yes,
and he's got like this enormous social media following, and he's going to be the best football player ever. He's got like fake tattoos. I've seen these stage interviews that they do where they stop the interview. They tell the guy what to ask, and he tells his son what to say. The kid obviously has no idea what's going on, and I feel so bad for the kid. And I've been around sports. I was on a couple good baseball teams growing up with high-level club baseball, and there were a couple kids in our team that were much better than us, and they quit baseball before they ended high school. Their dads were so hard on them.
Wow.
And their dads were obviously living vicariously through. So I bring that up because if I was like that and I wanted to create my son into this factory-made CrossFitter, I would have him bodybuild and endurance until he was probably 15 or 16 years old. All right, so I would probably start him at age 10, and he would lift and just do cardio for 5 years. No thrusters for time, no muscle-ups for time. It would just be strengthen your muscles, get some joint integrity, find that proper bend of stability, mobility, but also train your heart, right? Get some aerobic work in. Rowing, biking, running, kind of mix that up. I think that's probably the most common background of a successful CrossFitter. And I'm going to take sport out of it. Just someone that gets a lot out of CrossFit. And how many times do we have someone come in? I had someone come in yesterday. I go to the gym, I lift, I'm by myself, I do bench, I do bis, I do back, I do legs once every 8 weeks, and I go for runs. That's my training background. Awesome, you're healthy, you're working out, you're fit, should be proud of that. We even have some guys at the gym right now that they've taken 1 day of CrossFit away and they're going to Fitness 19 to do some swole work, some bodybuilding work. Bodybuilding is not, when I say bodybuilding, it's not standing on a stage in a bathing suit that's too small with a fake oiled up tan and flexing in front of people. That's not what I mean by bodybuilding. That's more of the competition side. Bodybuilding to me is just lifting free weights, or lifting weights, I should say, to try to strengthen muscles and muscle groups around your body, but also put some endurance training in. Thoughts?
I sort of agree. I would say the big thing about bodybuilding is if it is done with free weights like dumbbells or barbells, that's great. I see a lot of bodybuilding where they're using machines.
Yeah,
and I'm not a huge fan of machine work, maybe just because I have been a CrossFitter. The other thing is most of the people who do additional bodybuilding work, and I don't fault them for it, we don't probably train chest as much in CrossFit or biceps.
True.
So a lot of people are doing bench or biceps or something, again, for aesthetics.
Right.
And that's totally fine. The other thing is I probably would push my kid to do gymnastics as well. Because I think when I see people learning movements in CrossFit, the ones who have a gymnastic background of any sort, and I think of Patrick Vellner too, like they have a great advantage when it comes to learning high skill movements. I mean, you can pick them up.
Yes.
But I would say anyone, and if you do a lot of gymnastics as a kid, there's a certain point where it gets really dangerous and crazy.
Yeah.
So I would say but a foundational experience in gymnastics can be very helpful.
Yeah, so let's go right into the next one, which is sport, because gymnastics can be included in sport. Now, you're talking more about like, hey, kids, fitness, go to like, hey, Brock, when you're 5, go to gymnastics class.
Yeah.
Like, he's not competing.
No.
But, I do agree with you that I can usually tell, and you probably can too, if someone has a gymnastics background, but just watching their first few times on the rig.
Yeah.
Like I remember watching Tara doing some kipping motions on the rig, Kathleen back in the day.
Yeah.
And I'm like, okay, we didn't teach them that and they already know it.
Right.
Where does that come from? You talk to them, you have a conversation. Oh, I did gymnastics when I was a kid. Duh. Like I can tell. And I do agree with you that gymnastics is such a great background because of how much body weight movement you do in CrossFit. We've said this all the time. Most of the movements we do in CrossFit are just your body.
Yep.
And the body awareness, core strength, the concept of flexibility,
yes,
and how important it is.
Yeah.
That all gets hammered into people when they're doing gymnastics. So I agree that that's probably one of the best, if not the best, sport background to have.
Okay.
Prior to starting CrossFit. Now let's talk about sports on a macro level. Generally speaking. And again, I was going to err more towards college professional because, and I bring that up not because they're better athletes, but because when you are in a college sport, you're more likely on a strength and conditioning regimen for years.
True.
So I'll use Dave Boak as an example. He was a college football player. When he came into CrossFit, he was obviously a big, strong dude, right? And you don't have to play sports to be a big, strong dude. But one thing that he had that others guys just had that 4 years of training his lower body, his posterior chain. Like I remember doing Bulgarian split squats. We were on a big Bulgarian routine when he started. And I remember us telling the gym about Bulgarians, and a lot of people are like, oh, cool movement, like new movement, let's do it. I'm going to get my butt strong and my hamstring strong. It's going to help me squat more. And Boak was like, no. He's like, I did way too many of these in college. I'd never want to do these again. And it's funny to me, I always bring this up because I didn't play a college sport. While I was partying, not that I was a big partier, or just being a normal college kid and not eating well and watching a lot of TV and trying to skip classes, those guys were in the weight room 4 days a week, all year, 4 years straight. that development, and that's really when like a lot of our bodies really have the most potential to put on muscle mass and get stronger, right? Like that age 18 to 24 gap time. If you're just being a normal college student during that time, and then you have someone that's similar background to you, but they're training for a sport and learning about strength and conditioning and in the weight room in the morning, and then going to class, then the weight room at night, they're going to have a huge advantage over anyone that starts CrossFit 8 years later, just because that base was strengthened. So while I was partying and eating Easy Mac, those guys were lifting weights. Why do we not accept that as a fact, that that's going to have a huge impact on your future long-term progress with strength and fitness?
It does. I mean, we've talked about training age, and so
very similar topic.
They have an advanced training age. I would say the two things I always caveat with when I see high-level athletes at that level is, one, what kind of injuries have they picked up? So Dave Boak could not even deadlift like a regular deadlift because his back was so bad.
Yep.
It's actually amazing how much he's rehabbed, and now he can do regular deadlifts. But at first, he had to do
trap bar,
and all that. And so we see a lot of John Hartman, there are a lot of people with residual injuries from sports, high-level sports when they were younger.
Yeah, contact sports.
Yeah, football especially. We see a lot of that. The second, and so it takes time for them sometimes to recover from that. The second one, Mike McKinney probably too.
Yep.
True. The second issue is like you said, some of them are burnt out like nobody's business in terms of fitness and exercise. We've seen former pro athletes. Remember that really big dude who came in with barefoot all the time?
Willie Colon.
Yeah. Like these guys don't necessarily want to exercise anymore. Yeah. Like you said, Boak was like, I don't want to see another Bulgarian split squat.
Yeah, they don't want to be yelled at anymore in a weight room. Yeah.
Even people like Nick Squire was a high-level swimmer.
Yep.
He never wants to swim again.
Yeah.
So anyone who has been in that environment, they might be almost too overloaded.
Been there, done that.
Yeah, and so to find the joy in fitness and exercise,
Yep.
you gotta have to recapture that sometime.
Yeah, and that's a negative, right? Like we can have some pros and cons of all these, and I do want to touch on both. And another con, and I'm going to bring up Hines, right? Hines was another college football player.
Yeah.
Banged up still. But here's another thing, and he admitted this to me, and Hines has come a long way.
Oh, yeah.
We were just talking about this last week.
I had him demo thrusters today.
Yeah. Oh, wow. Yeah. He's come a really long way. But he... In his defense, for a long time, Hines, if you don't know him, just give you some background, he's probably the best athlete in this gym. Like if we did like a scouting combine that graded your strength, power, speed, quickness, he would crush all of us, right? And you could tell he's a little bit of a competitive guy. And in these intense, big class environments, you know, his range of motion is not always there. And we bust on him all the time. We bust on him all the time for it. We've said things to him, and Hines is a great dude. He's very receptive. But he gave me an explanation that made so much sense to me, and it's really not his fault. He said, in college, when we lifted, it wasn't about range of motion and standards and rep versus no rep. He goes like, we just had to move load as fast as we could so that we can get more explosive, so that when we play football, we are stronger, faster, and we do more damage, right? And like I remember thinking, I've watched so many athletes, Saquon Barkley, watching him clean in college, and other I look into a lot of college programs and how they train, and I always walk away saying, man, they move like shit. But these guys are hang cleaning 385 for 6 reps. Like that's an insane amount of weight. But they're all bad reps. They're not teaching anything about elbows through. They're wearing lifting straps. Their backs look like a shitting dog, right? But they're moving weight fast.
Okay.
So for the short term, it works.
Yeah.
It gets them stronger. But as they get older, there's 2 things that happen. You could get hurt.
Yeah.
But also, you don't understand standards when you start CrossFit.
Correct.
It's hard to reprogram an adult. It really is.
Very hard.
So that's a negative of sport, just that how often you got beat up and just not understanding why we teach things the way we do. Part of it's standards, part of it's safety, and it's usually a blend of the both. Let's go into what I think has been a growing trend in this gym, maybe not yours, but over the past 5 years, is our triathletes. And I think about Reno. I think about Allison. We have several. I don't want to forget anyone, but... They come into CrossFit and Reno was CrossFit first and Ironman, now he's back, right? Mm-hmm. But they come in thinking, and I'm talking more about triathletes, that they are fitter / more diverse than just a marathon runner, which is true to an extent. But a lot of their work is aerobic, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 hours of just constant movement, low intensity, not a lot of strength, but just moving for that much time. If you tell Bison to go do an hour run, most of us would fall apart, myself included.
Or leave.
Yeah, or leave. Next Wednesday's what? 20K run. But, I bring that up because in their defense, that's what they were training for, right? They were training these mixed modal pieces. Like we have the Indian Trail Triathlon coming up that a few people from here are doing this weekend. And I've been to one before, and you could tell there's a lot of fitness there, all right? Or a lot of endurance, I should say. The question is, are you fit when you do that? I think you have a very strong component of fitness, but I don't think you have the broad scope. And when you go into CrossFit, which is such a broad scope, you start to realize you come in with some ego. A lot of triathletes have an ego because they do things that a lot of people can't, and it's a lot of work, and you deserve to have an ego when you put that much time in. But then you're like, wait, squatting, pressing, lifting, and running? I've even seen some of these triathletes come to workouts where today's workout, thrusters and running, like, oh, I'm going to crush this because it's running. But what about the 15 thrusters that you have to do 5 times? So, you've been coaching for a while. You've been around it as well. Have you ever run a marathon?
No.
Yeah, okay.
I hope never to.
Yeah, same here. But what are your thoughts on coaching them, being around them? Because all the respect in the world to them, because the amount of work that goes into it. But they struggle with this when they start.
The strength training is the biggest deficit for these athletes. And we actually see more than we might expect in terms of seeing these endurance/triathlons. Because if you think about it, a lot of people out of college who are highly athletic always are looking for a challenge. And one of the easiest challenges that they sort of glom on, and Don Fall did this too. He was a triathlete before he started CrossFit, is you do CrossFit. And and Chris Henshaw did the same thing. I mean, he was one of the most elite triathletes out there before he switched on to CrossFit. And so you can see that these people do have amazing endurance, but we have very high intensity for short periods of time. It's very rare for a CrossFit workout to be longer than 20, maybe 30 minutes tops.
Right.
And we do a lot of strength training. So the emphasis, and they usually have fairly limited ranges of motion because they have a lot of hip flexor tightness.
Yes.
They're really, really tight. So when I see these athletes, I think build your strength, improve your mobility, and in some way you're sacrificing some of your long-term aerobic capacity.
Yeah.
But for your health, especially as you get older, there's no doubt if you don't train strength as you get older, it doesn't matter how many marathons you run at 60, you're not going to be nearly as fit as someone who can squat 200 pounds.
Right.
You know what I'm saying?
Right.
So this is the sort of thing that you have to kind of switch their mindset into.
Yeah.
I love their, most of them have a really tough mindset.
Yeah.
And their capacity to endure pain. Or I don't want to say pain because it makes it sound
mental pain.
Yeah, mental challenge.
Yeah.
But that's the part you have to kind of switch them on to.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, those are really good points. And what you brought up was what I was going to be the main attribute of the next group are the runners, right? People that come in with just a running background. And there are still a lot of people out there that's what they do. That's their workout. They don't do strength. Maybe they stretch a little bit, but they run 5 days a week, and a lot of advantages to it. The runners, and I'm going to group this in with the bikers as well, are generally speaking, just from my experience, incredibly tight. And especially like that long, slow type where you really don't open up your stride. And I think about this with bikers all the time. Almost every biker that I've been around are tight posteriors, have a really hard time with deadlifts. If you think about the position they're in when they bike, they're like that flex back position.
Yeah.
And at the bottom, the straightest their leg gets at the bottom, it's still not extended, their knee. So their hamstring, if you think about it, it never truly extends. So they come into CrossFit, they wanted to try something new. Their legs are strong. There's no denying that. Like Mark Ollie, Dylan Casey, right? Like Dylan Casey, the next pair of shorts that fit him will be the first. Like his legs are huge. And I remember seeing him without knowing his Tour de France background. I'm like, that guy did something because normal people don't look like that with their legs. And he's actually in my opinion, he's done really well with CrossFit.
Really well.
But Mark Ollie's a guy, he did really well over the years. And I miss that guy. I gave him a lot of respect for how often he came in early and worked on himself to get ready for a WOD. It'd be a half hour per day.
Yeah.
But I think that came from the fact that when he started, he was a strong guy and a great biker with a strong lower half. But his backside was very inflexible. And yet he struggled with that for a long time, just like staying on his heels when he squats, getting to the bottom of the deadlift in a good position. Now, his aerobic system was good. And I always felt like he was someone that never fell apart in a workout. And like you said, he was tough in that he would always be able to grind through a workout.
Yep.
But it took him a long time to get comfortable with a 75-pound thruster just because of the mobility. So I see this with, I have a beginner that I just did last night. He's going to be joining our gym next week, and his background is running. And I was like, okay, so like that immediately puts you into a tier in my head of like, all right, we're going to struggle with this and with this and this. We do an overhead squat, and those are the things that a lot of these guys run because they never put their hands above their head.
Mm-hmm.
And if you sit a lot at work with your shoulders hunched over, you're going to be in a tough spot with anything overhead we do. Mm-hmm. He does a PVC overhead squat and it looked great. I'm like, where did that come from, dude? Like, I was expecting to see like a train wreck overhead squat like I normally do in beginner sessions. And he goes, oh, I used to swim. Like, there you go. Click. You know, that you have that shoulder mobility.
Yes, a lot of shoulder mobility.
So, you know, and he said, he goes like, my lower body is good. And he has a very well-developed lower body, but his upper body is just not developed yet. He does do some strength training, and he can do a strict handstand push-up. So we're not starting from scratch there. But he's that kind of guy where like that significant running background, I think he'll recover well. I think he'll get through workouts well. Aerobic system will be fine. But some of that just like over body capacity work, like when you make him do 15 pull-ups, it's night and day different than doing 3. Just that capacity is not there. And that takes a long time to build.
Very true.
So let's group the last two together. Boot camp / class-based fitness with one-on-one training. I tie this is a good start, not the best for CrossFit. And again, think about yourself. Where did you come from? Think about your kids if you want them to CrossFit someday. What this does prior to CrossFit that would help is it gives you structure of going to a class, meeting with an instructor, a coach, trainer, whatever you want to call them, and you are following instructions. You're not doing what you want. You're not picking and choosing. There are days you come in where you don't like the workout, but you still do it. And this is where I think you can develop a lot of discipline in and out of the gym, is going to a class and you're simply being told what to do. And that's really what a lot of CrossFit is. Not everyone. Some people cherry pick and do their own programming. That's fine. But again, generally speaking, do you know, just reflect a little bit on some people you know that have a background with a boot camp, one-on-one trainer, and then they come into CrossFit. What is it like to be around them, coach them, watch them work out?
Usually the level of intensity it varies. It depends. If you have a personal trainer, usually you're not always going to go super intense with that. Most of the coachability is reasonable in some of in these athletes, but it depends. Was it Zumba? Was it like spin bar or something like that?
Yeah, like in a dark room hiding in the corner.
Right.
Yeah.
Was it Orange Theory? Like there is kind of a range of motions and intensities that are involved. We had someone who was an Orange Theory instructor for a while, and she moved pretty well, actually.
Yeah.
So I can't really sort of stereotype all classes into like one type of athlete. It does depend on their experience with it. I think people who are doing Pilates or bar or something, like they actually are very mobile and they have good flexibility.
Yeah.
I would hope that most of these people are coachable. That's the main thing that I would want to take out of it.
Yeah. And one thing I noticed with individual people that have individual training, one-on-one training, the one negative on them, and it's not their fault either, is the expectation of how much attention you get. Like if you're in a class of 20 and you're used to one-on-one training, you're not going to get the same attention.
True.
And that's tough to accept early on. And then you start asking yourself, what am I getting for? What am I paying for? But generally speaking, take CrossFit out of it. We have some people that come from a boot camp that's in the area. I'm not going to put them on blast here. They don't teach things the right way. So they're like, oh yeah, I've done thrusters before. Okay, let me see. Oh boy. All right. We used to do snatches all the time at our gym. Oh man. It's like there are a lot of fake kind of wannabe CrossFits out there that, you could tell their education was watching a 2-minute YouTube video. And, there's people that don't understand the snatch is your elbows go to immediate lockout. You're not pressing the bar up at the top of the snatch. I know some people do that because it's too heavy, but they actually think it's okay. They think that, and they weren't taught the right way.
To be fair, there's some CrossFit affiliates who don't do an awesome job.
That's a very good point as well. So I want to wrap this up because next week's episode is going to be a similar flavor, but we're going to dive more into the mental state. Same kind of genre of topic. But, if you have someone that is not currently CrossFitting that you want them to, or they're going to, or you just see someone that's starting off, I think it would help them understand what did they do prior to CrossFit and understand you can just go through the topics that we just went through and really it would you really could do a lot for them if you knew what their background was based on, all right, they're definitely going to struggle with this early on. Based on our anecdotal advice, they'll definitely they'll have progress with this on, or even like the mental state of being burned out from college sports and all that, or having attention of a personal trainer. Because I think that's one of the arts of coaching. To me, coaching is never science. It's always an art. That the more you know about someone's background, it's not being intrusive. It's not being nosy. I think the more you know about that person and what they used to do and what they're like, it's going to help you help them, help themselves down the road. So thanks for listening, guys, and we'll be back next week with something similar, but the mental state.
Thank you, everybody, for taking the time out of your day to listen to the Herd Fit podcast. Be on the lookout for next week's episode.